Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Men Matter series on the male perspective. The podcast that's all about dispelling stereotypes and shining a light on the rich and varied experiences of Black men from all around the world. Each episode aims to broaden understanding and foster appreciation for their unique stories that often go unheard. Now, here is your host, Lana Reed, to introduce you to yet another remarkable Black man with an insightful perspective to share.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reed, and today, on this day, I have the opportunity to sit down with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Timothy Felton. He's an author, educator, mentor, coach, out here creating a great impact in this world, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with him today, learning more about the work that he is doing. But first and foremost, as I always do, sir, I take a quick moment to pause and say thank you to you for making time for me today. Time is a gift. Once we give, we can't get it back. And I truly appreciate you setting aside this time to talk little old me. And with that, sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'd like to also thank you for the opportunity for reaching out, through via email, and like I said, us connecting, and hopefully, like I said, we bring out some good nuggets today for some people in the audience and for the youth, like I said, throughout the United States. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, let me get going because I got a lot of stuff I want to pick your brain about today. But I want to start off by talking about two of the numerous titles that you have written because they shed light on your personal journey and how Dr. Timothy Felton got to be Dr. Timothy Felton. And that is From the Hood to Hooded and The Undrafted. So I was just wondering if we could start off by saying, what was your original career choice and how is it that you became Dr. Timothy Felton?
Yeah, well, as a young kid, my first profession I thought was going to be a trade. Throughout, school, we usually have career fairs, career days, at the school when you're in elementary. And usually, like I said, they pretty much bring out, firefighters, policemen, lawyers, doctors, engineers. And none of those really resonated with me. Because when I was at the house, we had a plumber to come by, and the plumber, I was watching him work, he fixing the pipes. And so my initial profession, I thought was going to be a plumber because I saw a plumber come by our house and he fixed the pipes. And I would go to school, and when we have our career days, and after the career day, we go back to the classroom, the teacher would be like, so what career? And I would say plumber. We didn't have any plumbers here today. The kids will start laughing, you know what I mean? But for me, that's how I connected. It was more hands-on. And like I said, later in life, I found out, I have a lot of hands-on skills, different things like that, even working with, students, youth, athletes or whatever. It's more hands-on. So that was the original plan, to be a plumber. I held on to that till I got to high school. And in high school, I started writing for our journalism paper. And I did the sports page, so I switched from plumbing to journalism, and I thought, like I said, I would go to school in journalism. I was a former student athlete, played football, ran track since the age of 7, and I thought, like I said, wasn't a goal to go to the NFL or Olympics or anything like that, but once my athletic career had ended, the goal was to say, okay, I could continue in sports, to be a journalist, I could get in events for free. I got press passes, So you still, enjoy some of those luxuries, as a journalist. So the first year I took journalism classes, passed all of those. Second year, I got into a literature class, and the professor were talking like Shakespeare, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this because I have 4 or 5 more classes. To take, to get that degree. So I started, researching, different majors. And then I can think back to a friend that I had, that had a probation officer as a juvenile, got in trouble. I remember going to the office with him and saw how the juvenile officer, worked with him to get him back on course. So at that time, they switched to juvenile officer. So I majored in criminal justice, minor in criminology, Like I said, graduated from Southeast Missouri State University, played football there. Got to the end of my career, had a couple of workouts with NFL teams, Indianapolis Colts, Cleveland Browns, pro day workouts. Didn't make it, did get drafted, but I had my education to fall back on. So the first book, The Undrafted, arise from that situation, not being drafted, and just kind of giving, like a memoir from playing from age 7, throughout college and those experiences. And then later on, I went back to school, got my master's, got my doctorate degree. And while I was working on my doctorate degree, I was working also on From the Hood to Being Hooded. So I'm working on a dissertation, 115 pages, also working on a book at the same time. So that book kind of arrives as a memoir as well, kind of do, the educational journey, which is, for me as a student athlete, like I said, I was a C student from kindergarten to undergrad, never had a 3.0 GPA until I got to graduate school and doctoral school. Had a 13 on the ACT, so a lot of the, adversity and struggles came within that book, just kind of mapping out. Yeah, my parents were dropouts. So my mom was from Mississippi, dad was from Arkansas. Mom dropped out 10th grade, dad dropped out 8th grade. During that time, they had to work, to help support the family. So by the time I got to the 9th grade, I had already superseded my dad in education. And I got to the 11th grade, I had superseded my mom in education, so had an older sister, did go to college, graduate. I graduated as well. And then my baby sister also graduated as well. So that's kind of how those two books arrived, kind of how my career started. And you can kind of see trade, going to journalism, switching the major. And I did, after undergrad, go to barber school. So I ended up taking up a trade, cutting hair for like 3 years in a barbershop while I worked, like I said, as a juvenile officer in the juvenile system. So, and then went along later and wrote 11 books. So journalism that I had studied in high school and the first year of college, that kind of came back full circle as well. So that's kind of like a brief overview of like career, education, and pretty much kind of where I'm at today.
So many skills. Never gonna be a man without a job. You got many directions you can go. You can
Yeah.
You touched on something I kind of want to explore, and that is because you mentioned you were an athlete from a very young age, and it was your hope to actually go pro one day. And because you're in this space and you have working knowledge of it, who do you feel, in your opinion, bears the greater responsibility when it comes to a young athlete in saying, we know we're not going to take away from you the fact that you're good, you have talent, and you have skill, but let's be realistic, this might not pan out, and you need to have a backup plan. Do you think that's the parent, the coach, the counselor? Who should start planting those seeds in the athlete's ear?
Yeah. Well, through my experience, I didn't really, my goal actually wasn't to make it to the NFL. Like I didn't have the goal to go to the NFL. What ended up happening, like I said, by playing and, doing well, in college or whatever, you're, noticed by scouts. You know what I mean? So I remember the one weekend, I was heading home. You know what I mean? The season was over. I thought, my career was over. Cleveland Browns called and said, "Hey, we need you to come for a workout." And they had me 3 or 4 hours, worked out, ran a 40-yard dash, did all the, the drills and skills. But for me, that wasn't a goal. But I learned through the process about one of the books I got that I've written is called Athlete Identity. And with the athlete identity, the component of that, when I'm going out speaking and doing workshops with student athletes now, the goal was to make sure they understand that their identity was just tied in their sport. So for me, I recognized, you sort of changes within, from a plumber to a journalist. But once I poured in on criminal justice, finding out my purpose was to work with youth, students, and student athletes. It was simultaneously, actually. So it wasn't, like I said, my parents, like I said, their education, they didn't have it. My dad, I think, had played baseball, but like I said, didn't really have those conversations, so it wasn't, like I said, a coach. I pretty much kind of recognized when I got to college that, just kind of reading that the percentage was like 2% of those that were going to make it. And so that other 98%, you was going to go into the workforce, be an entrepreneur, go to the military, or, do other things. So it was simultaneous for me. Once I decided, okay, I'm a major in criminal justice, I started building a resume. And so knowing also that my identity, I understood that I played football, right? And I just wasn't a football player. So that was the difference. So those are two different things. So most people are tied into that's all they do, and that's who they are as an athlete, the sport that they participate in. But I understood simultaneously you have to be working toward both. It's a little different these days because you have, social media, you have NIL deals, you have this money out here. For me, I'm working like most athletes. You're going to school, you're taking your courses, but my goal was to become that juvenile officer. So that's the track I'm on. The pro workouts and stuff like that came just with me playing, but the goal was to make sure that I was prepared. Even if I went to the NFL, when you're done in the NFL, like I said, you still got to have, like I said, something to fall back on. So for me, it was like, in the criminal justice department, they had jobs to work with juveniles at the juvenile center down there. So I did that for a year when I was in school. When I come back home in the summer, I would work at the Division of Recreation with youth for the 2 or 3 summers that I was there. So what I was doing is kind of building a resume. At the end of our major, you have to have what they call a capstone now, internship. And so I ended up doing an internship with probation and parole because everything I was lining up to be the deputy juvenile officer. So I would say it's important for parents if they know, to kind of help guide their student athletes, through that process if they know. If they don't know, like I said, we need to, connect with, a family member, someone that has, that knows the sports arena. But like I said, I don't think it's just on one particular person individual. But I would start with parents because usually the parents are the most instrumental person when you go through the process of parental boarding, because a lot of, like I said, student you may be with a grandparent, you may be with a uncle, aunt, you know what I mean, during that process. But for me, it was just recognizing that. And so when I go out and speak, that's one of the major things that I'm just trying to get across. I give them my background. I always be transparent, like I mentioned earlier, like I said, only being a C student throughout. And I think the C student part only came because my parents had dropped out. They didn't really, C's were good. I wasn't pushed to get a B or A, like we did, with our children and my wife. But so for me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna bring home a C. C is good. I'm fine
That's
with
all
a C.
that was expected.
That's always expected. Then you get to graduate school, which I had to go in on a provisional because I didn't have a 3.0 to get into the graduate school. But being at the graduate level, going back and get a master's, you have to have a 3.0 to receive. And I can remember the first 2 classes that I took, just kind of butterflies, little nerves there. You know what I mean? Because I've been a C student all my life. And now you're asking me to get all B's. You know what I mean? So the first 2 classes, I got 2 B pluses. And I was like, no, I can do this. Yeah. And then got A's throughout the rest. So finished with a 3.8 GPA for my master's in human services, and then went to doctoral school and finished with a 3.9. So I take those experiences, being transparent with a lot of the student athletes. But although another thing that I do is make sure that I don't dampen their dreams. So when I'm speaking, the first thing I mentioned is don't uh, deviate from your dream. So if your dream is to go to the NFL, the NBA, the Major Baseball League, National Hockey League, you keep that dream. So I'm not diminishing, just because I failed in the 98%, don't mean you gonna fall 90%.
True.
Because if it's 4 years, 40. I had 5 friends that go to the NFL. So I got some of those luxuries and benefits without getting my body beat up. You know what I mean? So I was able to, go to games, enjoy some of those luxuries, you know what I mean, with those guys that made it, but was happy for them. That just wasn't my path and my journey. But yeah, I don't think it's really one specific, I would start with parents if I was to choose. But like I said, that athlete, and like they don't have to know that they're more than their sport. You know what I mean? And like I said, a lot of universities have people coming in and speaking and doing workshops and teaching.
Just blowing
Like
heads up
on that issue, which is great. You know what I mean? Because it's needed. And some of those that speak, some of those did make it to the NFL and still, went through anxiety, depression, and different things like that. That wasn't my story because that wasn't ever my goal. I was working simultaneously to work on my goals, even outside of sports before my sport career ended.
Now, you're talking about a few, I had a flashback of an article, I think it was, I read it somewhere. You were able to balance in your journey, going to school, the athletics, and you just mentioned working. But I recall reading something an athlete was saying, and he's a younger one, and he was saying something to the effect of, you can't expect us as athletes to put in the time to practice, work out, watch the videos for games, and have enough time to be in our books as well. It's going to be one or the other. Is this new environment of sports taking up all of the time for these young athletes, or was he just doing the cop out?
Yeah, like I said, when I played, like I said, I only played, like I said, one sport, football. So coming into sports in the fall, which I played, so it's different, you know what I mean, depending on what sport you play. So football, we coming in right before school. So we're the first line of those that play fall sports the same time football do. They're coming in probably the first week of August. They're doing 2 or 3 weeks of, training camp, stuff like that. Then they start playing right away. Somebody that plays basketball or somebody that plays baseball in the spring, it's a little different. You have a little bit more time. You're just coming in, getting acclimated into your classes before your practices start. You may have some workouts. So it's different, I think, depending on the sport that you play. But just looking back, I just knew, like I said, I would think that's more of a cop out because you had time, and it's just what you did with your time, pretty much. Because like I said, once camp was over in the summer, like I said, you practicing every day, but one day may be films, and you may practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday real hard, and then on Friday you either plan or you travel. You know what I mean? So it's broken down even more. So you have time. So we went to parties, we traveled. So you have time. So it just depends on what you do with your time. I remember doing my dissertation. I did it, with student athletes, football players, their perception of engagement. And one of the questions that I asked was about time management. And I had 10 participants, and all 10 of them said time management was an issue for them. So I understand that component of it. But when going in deeper, asking them about why time management is difficult, and they kind of mentioned some of the things that the guy, like I said in the article, but you still have to balance your time. You know what I mean? So after practice, you go eat dinner, and then from that time to it's time to go to bed, what are you doing? You got time to study. Yeah. Quite naturally, you're tired and different things like that, but you have that option. And then some days, like for me, I picked most of my classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday because my high school was set up where we went 45 to 50 minutes, but we went to every class every day. Some people have block schedules where they go 4 classes. So for me, if I can choose that, I would choose those 4 or 5 classes. I'll be off on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And those Tuesdays and Thursdays were my days. Even if I had to lift or, do something with football, those would be my days where I'm doing my work and I'm studying. But if you had, homework that's due, on your Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, you got from Monday to Wednesday. And if I had classes Tuesday and Thursday, you just got to, like I said, pretty much, put out a schedule. For me, I have excellent organization skills. That helps. The structure of sports, I think, helps as well because you pretty program, in sports. They're gonna pretty much tell you what to do, when to practice, when to eat, when to lift weight. So your program, you have a schedule. So for me, but I use planners, the notes on the phone now, and that kind of translates into regular employee. You know what I mean? When you start working some of those skills that you learned in sports. Yeah, I would say comp out because I remember having a whole lot of time. And then when football season is over, you'll have maybe a month off, and then you'll come back and do like morning workouts or whatever. But that was like at 6 a.m. So that'd be full class. You get through with that, and that may go for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you off again February, March. You may come back to have spring practices for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then after that, school is out, and like I said, you home for the summer. So you have that time, within that school year, get your education. Now I think with majors, that may have a play because if you're an engineer major, you know what I mean? Like the majors, I think you have to, really be buckled down in those majors, you know what I mean? A little bit more. I was in criminal justice. Yeah, it wasn't tough. By taking the math and the sciences outside of regular, education. Yeah, I would say cop out. But even knowing, like I said, from the study, knowing too that from the study of the 10 participants, football players that I interviewed, all of them said time management wasn't. I can see why somebody would say that, but I think you still have.
Because you got to go work out, you got to, watch the tapes, you got to, but still, like you said, it's a matter of being disciplined on planning your time. Now, before I shift, I have one more question about athletics, and then I'm shift to your other books. And I guess it ties into your book, Black Boys Matter. Since you've been in sports education for a while, one of the things that's problematic to me is it seems in the Black community that a lot of us tend to put basketball, football in our kids' hands early and not saying, hey, a plumber is a viable option, a lawyer is a viable option, doctor is a viable. Why do you feel we think the sports is the viable option over something that's the numbers say is more viable?
Well, I think it would be the same with entertainment. Like if you was a singer, actor. I remember reading this one book. It was kind of talking about it was the Family Guy there, but it was talking about like seal order. And seal order was defined as you finding out what children's interest is early on. You know what I mean? And even if you can't pretty much, find out what it is, you try to get them involved in a variety of things, like stuff outside of sports. You got karate, you got debate, you know what I mean? You got other avenues, where you can get kids into certain things. So I remember each one of we have 3 daughters. So they all grown and gone now and married, so, but during the time when they were coming up, so we just kind of figure out, we ask them a lot of times, you know what I mean? And one may say, I want to do computer science, major in computer science. One could sing, so they went into music therapy. And one was between, like, wanted to be a doctor, but she didn't become a doctor. She became, she's a senior scientist now for one of the Pfizer, one of the top companies. So,
proud daddy.
Yeah, but what happened was, like I said, during that time, we got them involved in whatever they said they want to get involved in. Some of the stuff that we saw, we may have got them involved in. So, like the oldest daughter, she wanted to do computer science, but she switched from that to forensic psychology. Went to college for psychology, whatever majored in that. The middle daughter, they wanted to be the doctor. She went in biochemistry. So then the baby girl went in music therapy, but switched to psychology. You know what I mean? So, but we got them involved in everything we could. I can remember the middle daughter. She ran track. Well, all of them did sports, between volleyball, track, soccer. You know what I mean? But we started them early, just getting them involved in different things. And I remember the middle daughter when I think she ran 1 year, 2 years, and then last year, the third year, we driving to practice and she like just started crying. Like, I don't know how to run track. I turned the car around, you know what I mean, went back home. I'm thinking in my mind, that's $100 I ain't got to spend. But, since you're crying, you know what I mean, this ain't something you want to do. But you're going to have to do something, you know what I mean? So got back to the house. Wife was upset, but I'm explaining to her, like,
that's not what she wanted to
Brian,
do.
that ain't what you want to do. You know what I mean? So we said, but you gonna do something. What would you like to do? So she said, got in karate. She did that for a year, and then she went back into like basketball. I think right after that, she didn't pick track back up until high school. But she ran those 4 years in high school. Middle daughter, kind of focused on music, but in high school, went into soccer, ran track for a year. Oldest daughter did the volleyball. Then all girls, in the last two, they were cheerleaders at the same
bless
time.
Your heart. Bless your heart. The only man in the house.
Yeah. I got
a lot of man cave time.
I got two sisters as well. So I kind of grew up like that with the sisters, my mom. It was me and my dad. I got 3 daughters. I got 2 granddaughters. I do have a grandson. I have my wife. So been around females pretty much, all my life. But I think it's important to get them involved and a lot, coming up when they're little and then just kind of going off of them. So today is
what they're interested in.
A lot of the, it's kind of like a microwave society. So you have a lot of parents, their kid is their way out in a sense. You know what I mean? So they ticketed on that, you know what I mean? Which, like I said, if you do recognize that your son or daughter has an athletic skill, you know what I mean?
Don't live through your child.
Don't live through them, but you can still horn those, those gifts and talents. But if they get to a point like our daughter did, she picked it back up, and she knew, like, I'm not going to college in that. I want to be, major in biochemistry. So, you know what I mean? But the activities and recreation, the oldest daughter, she, once she got through with volleyball and sports in general, she got into like student government, type activities. She was on like the top student government, you know what I mean? So even though she wasn't doing sports, you know what I mean? Like she went into other avenues. Then she just went to work. She worked at Sears, she worked at the movies, you know what I mean? So they didn't have idle time, you know what I mean? And then we made sure we put them in every program that was connected with their school, the colleges and universities, local career fairs, college fairs, and so I think all that was important, just kind of molding them.
Keep them active and exploring their
you got to keep active.
Now let me shift here because I want to get to a couple other of your books that you have out. Now, Black Boys Matter, you've been in the educational space for a while, and there's a lot of talk about how the traditional K through 12 system is not doing its best when it comes to Black boys. What are some ways that it's failing, and what needs to be changed?
Yeah, so that book kind of came about. I was talking to one of them. I started in law enforcement, so retired from law enforcement as a juvenile officer. So me and one of my coworkers, we sit on, we talk about 2-3 times a week, and I was just telling them that I think I'll write a book. You know what I mean? Over about youth or whatever, and I said it's gonna be called Black Boys Matter. So us working in the law enforcement, criminal justice system, juvenile justice system, we've seen a whole lot. So it kind of arrived from there. So it started with, our experiences working, with the family court and working with youth and families and stuff like that or whatever. They had a school that were connected with the detention centers for those students that were detained. It was a school that was connected with them. It didn't count if your work and all that stuff didn't count or whatever. So basically, if you was there 60 days, there's just 60 days of school. Unless your parents, brought your work in and took, with most parents when they was in there, they didn't do that. So it arrived from that, but then, like I said, moving forward, like I said, I returned. I went to work with high set and GED students that had dropped out, and then went through K through 12, worked as an advisor at the college level. So I had seen different levels, but through the K through 12 component of it, we just kind of noticed that a lot of the Black boys, just like even in the juvenile justice system, it was disproportionate. When they would come in, to the juvenile system, and then a lot of those Black boys that were in K through 12, a lot of the situations that would come and just say you have somebody in preschool, you have a Caucasian teacher, and he's working with a young Black boy, and for his age, he's 4, so he's hyper aggressive, and playing and reset. And you may look at that as, he has a behavior problem and different things like that or whatever, but it's just natural for a toddler to survive to be displaying certain, behaviors, so with that, like I said, a lot of times just going through, looking at the different teachers, talking with the different teachers, and then, like I said, I became a dean of students in K through 12. And with that experience, just kind of seeing how the staff, even working with the middle schools and even the high school, how they pretty much, work with the Black boys. They was already coming in. There's some pieces in the book where I talk about, when you get pulled over by a cop, and the talk is a section in there where most African American parents or guardians talk with their young men about if you get stopped by law enforcement officer, how to hold your hands, how to speak, and even with all of that, that may not be enough. You can lose your life. But then on the flip side, there's a point in there where I talked about the Black on Black crime. It's also an issue, where, like I said, we're killing, each other. Like I said, it goes into a lot of the disrespect stuff, economics, drugs, and different things or whatever within that. But a lot of things I see is it's about, I'm going into those systems with empathy. I'm going into those systems trying to build trust and really caring. Some staff members from the principal down to the custodian, some of them there, some of them burnt out, some of them there just, to make a paycheck or whatever. But there are those as well there that truly care about, the students that they work with. So yeah, Black Boy Matters pretty much came about through that. And then also in there, what I did, I had like 50 of my friends to write a page, right? So I had principals, I had social workers, I had parents, I had barbers. So everybody pretty much that deals with a community. So I had them to write a piece. I wrote a piece as a juvenile officer. I had another juvenile officer write a piece. So just kind of to break up, to give you stories for those that either work with Black boys or those that actually had children as Black boys. And a couple of the parents that wrote had lost their son. One I know to violence, and the other one just, I think he had like an illness, ended up dying. But they wrote those pieces just to kind of show why Black boys matter in those, whether it was a parent or whether it was a principal, social worker, counselors, therapists. I had a variety of them to write why Black boys matters to them and their stories in there. And then at the end, me and my coworker Karen Coleman, that co-wrote the book with me, we just went over stories that we had over the last 20 years. Some funny, some sad, but at the end, you know what I mean, it was just to kind of show, people outside, instead of looking at the media and kind of judging Black boys off of that. You have one incident where a juvenile officer and you have to have your client to visit you, at your office. So you can do an office visit, and young man had a backpack on, and every time he come, he had his backpack on. So they got to get checked. Metal detectors. They come in, man, you got that backpack on all the time. I just got my shirts in here. Let me see. You got different color shirts. So he ended up telling me, say, I got to go through like 3 or 4 different gang neighborhoods.
Oh.
So I'm changing shirts like as I go, you know what I mean, to be safe to come see you. So it's stuff like that, stories like that I thought was important, to bring out where people can see kind of the stuff that Black boys go through. And from that incident, I ended up remember just saying, hey, is it really that important, for you to make it to the office visit, where you can go and talk to the judge and let them know, say, hey, we can do a home visit, we can do a community visit, we can meet at McDonald's, we can talk on the phone, So it's different ways to meet, because that was eye-opening, for them to explain that. Yeah, so that's how Black Boys Matters, right? I think some good information.
Yeah, awesome. Now I'm gonna make the assumption that it's very impactful for Black boys to have Black educators in their orb. And I know nationwide there are not many Black male educators. In Missouri, are there a lot of you or no?
There are not. And like I said, just throughout, it was like I was picking up some food today for lunch, and it was one of the safety officers that work in one of the school districts. He was in front of me. He was talking to the person that worked there, and she was asking him questions about his job and stuff like that. And she was like, "What did you do today?" So he was like, "I went and picked up, people." So they have teachers coming in from, like he said, China and different other countries. Teacher jobs is just a shortage period. You know what I mean? Um, he said they were, picking, teachers up from the airport that were from different countries just causing a shortage. But definitely, the percentage of Black males in education, elementary, K through 12, which I would say maybe 2 or 3%, if that high. Um, we have a lot of administrators that are, but it's still a shortage in that, principals and assistant. We do have a lot, and we have some superintendents or whatever in places. The percentage is definitely low when it comes to education, and it's a piece in our own education. And Black Boy Matters, it kind of spells out those types of statistics and stuff like that. And how it is important for African American boys to see African American men, as teachers or whatever profession, that they're in, so they can look like the black plumber. So I wanted to be be a plumber,
As a role model and mentor.
Yeah, some role models. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let me talk about a little African American boy that's very special to you, and you actually wrote a book about him. Tell us about Jordan.
Oh yeah, Jordan is he just turned 4 July 25th. He is full of life, right? So right now he's big with Michael Jackson. So he can do Thriller.
He got the glove and everything.
He don't have the glove, but he got the shoulder and the slide. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he's full of fun, and like I said, he's a friendly kid. I took him to a couple of football games, and he'll speak, "Hey, hi." He'd be like, "Do y'all know my granddad?" They do not know your granddad. But, and then, like I said, full of love hugs, you know. So he's played t-ball, he's in flag football now, he does swimming that he does and basketball. So his mom got the memo like with us with them, you know what I mean? She keep them involved in different things, activities. They go to the Home Depot has like a workshop type thing on Saturdays that he can go with build stuff, you know what I mean? So keep them involved in a lot of activities, which is good. But the book arrives from is like Jordan doing, going somewhere fun. That's his favorite word. So you pick him up from school, he like, where are we going? Like, and then he'll say, are we going somewhere fun today? So I got the title from him, Jordan going somewhere fun, because he asks his parents that, he asks the grandparents that all the time. And so within the book, I got a little storyline. So the first probably 8 slides in the book, just kind of, he waking up, asking his parents, where are we going today? We going somewhere fun, and they're gonna surprise him. So they ride through the car. He imagining certain things, you know what I mean, that he may go to the theme park or different things, but they end up at the zoo. And so go to the zoo, go through, have a great time at the zoo, coming back home, and just tell his parents he had a great time. Then every page after that is Jordan going somewhere fun. The next 15 pages. At his age, Jordan has been on an airplane more than I was. He's been on a cruise. He's going on a Disney cruise. He's been to the beaches. I'm just saying, like, and this, he just turned 4. So
He living
he,
life.
he living life. So I'm like, tell his parents what he gonna do at 15, 16, you know what I mean? But it's a good thing. So yeah, so the book it goes through just kind of fun places that he's been, house, airplane, on a cruise ship, on the beach, at the aquarium. He big on dinosaurs too. All the dinosaurs. He loved T-Rex. You know what I mean? So we have a science center here. He loves that. So yeah, so the book that arrived based off of just, sitting around him asking, we going somewhere fun. The first children's book I did never from the 2 granddaughters, you know what I mean? The oldest granddaughter, you ask her to do something, she'll say never, you know what I mean? So I created that as life's lessons, okay? Never play with fire, never, litter out the car, never talk to strangers, so basically I'm writing books based off of either my life, um, memoirs about my life, just everyday stuff, to bring out.
Awesome. Yeah, listen to your grandkids. You talk about you and your wife giving your children exposure and letting them experiment with things. The choices. Your kids just took it to the next level, and here it is. They're doing the same thing with their kids, but just on a higher level. So awesome.
Higher level.
Good parenting. Good parenting. Good parenting.
Thank you. Yeah.
He's like, because some days we were like, whoo.
And even like I say, even with us growing up, like me and my wife talk, we didn't really, parents didn't, take you to many places. You like they have family unions. I've been to Mississippi and Arkansas because they were from there. My dad stayed in Chicago, so I had been there. But yeah, I mean, but I think that's how it's supposed to be, where the next generation does more
better than the last one.
Last generation, without living above your means or going, what I mean.
Awesome. Well, let me see here. Give me one more. I want to talk about one more book, and I've taken up more than your time than I expected.
Are we fine?
Man Up, Heal Up, Show Up.
Yes.
What's that one about? Because I think the title is just phenomenal itself.
Yeah. Once again, like I said, just talking with. First of all, I'm a man, and just talking to men about certain things, and a lot of it is kind of universal when you talk with them, no matter what age group, demographic, nationality, whatever, what I mean. But more so for I know African American men, like a lot of us grew up with certain uh, stigmas or stereotypes and different things like that. We were told to do certain things. So I can just remember, being a little boy, and they'll tell you, you don't sit in the middle, you don't cross your legs, you don't wear pink, you don't cry. You know what I mean? So a lot of those things um, usually affect you later on in life when and it kind of deals with a lot of mental health stuff as well as you get older and different traumas that you have experienced. So the man up component of it just kind of going over those components, laying out different myths about crying, showing it's okay to cry, showing people that it's okay, to go through therapy, and it's okay to be not okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to communicate, to talk, things. And I think a lot of that is happening these days. You know what I mean? With men, I'm going to a men's breakfast on Saturday. A lot of men put together, breakfast, and we can just come out and talk. They ask me to bring books and things like that. In the law enforcement field, it's probably about 20 of us that, either retired or moved on to other professions. Plus, we're too young to really retire. You know what I mean? We still work. So, but just get together and do, bowling, shoot pool, have conversation, go to baseball games, football games. Being able to be accountable, talk to each other, call each other. So the man up part is doing those things. Heal up part is dealing more with the mental health side. A lot of us suffer in silence. Don't talk things out, don't have conversation communication. But for the most part, a lot of that arrived from like they telling us, as little kids, don't cry. So that's an emotion, you know what I mean? So you may have lost someone close to you, but you're just trying to be tough and don't cry, but you need to cry. You have to know how to go through the grieving process, be able to deal with it. And then the last part is just showing up as a man. Basically being there, being accountable, making sure, whether you in the home or you're not in the home, whether you've been through a divorce, you don't divorce your kids. You still have responsibilities, as a man, to take care of those responsibilities. So show up in every area for yourself, making sure you get your self care. Even if you married, my self care is sports. Like I coached for 26 years, retired from that, but yeah, going to an event. You know what I mean? I can take myself to a restaurant. My wife can take herself to a restaurant. And just get that self care. She go get her nails done and different things. So we all have that. So, but showing up in every area of your life. Self, you have kids for your kids, if you're married for your wife. If you don't, you have nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, you know what I mean? So just show up. So the man up part is getting away from a lot of those myths. The healing part is dealing more with the mental health aspect of it is showing up and just being accountable.
Awesome. So good that men are now, especially my brothers,
Yeah.
Before we were talking, I was telling you I was born in North Carolina, so I got some older generation Black men who,
Right.
don't talk about this, man up about this. So it's nice to see the new generation of brothers saying, look, we got to deal with this. We got to take care of this. We can't keep on going like this. That's where we get high blood pressure from and all of that stuff. So I love that.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you my random question, and then I'm going to ask you to give us the website and let us know how we pick up all the books.
Yes.
Do you also mentor parents on how to guide their young athlete? We need some, I'm sure parents need help.
I do that. Like I said, I've done it. Don't do it as often now. Like I'm more focusing on, like for me, it's like the putting the books out. It helps a lot. But then you find out, hey, man, people ain't reading like that. You know what I mean? Whatever. So
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much help out where I can if it's mentoring, talking to people over the phone. My biggest thing is support. So a lot of times, if it's a student athlete, or if you're not a student athlete, because, like I said, I came from law enforcement, and like I said, I've worked with every aspect. I did big brother, big sister, mentoring. I coach. Like I said, work in education, work in higher ed. That's my passion and purpose. Yeah, I do. I don't do most of it now is group mentoring, so I do it in a group. But yeah, I mean, people still have people who say, give my number, they can call, and I can, do sessions and stuff like that.
So here's a random question: if your
Yep.
waiter, go ahead.
Go ahead.
If your waiter or waitress was a total jerk, do you still leave a tip?
Yes.
Okay.
Now the amount may be different, but you know what I mean. So because I think it's twofold. So maybe the waiter or waitress, they could be new and been trained, or you can get the job because people do well in interviews, but your character and integrity and how your customer service skills may not be up to par. You know what I mean? So
you're in the learning process.
Yeah, I could. You know what I mean? And that don't really bother me because just what I kind of explained to you, I understand the dynamics of it. You know what I mean? But I don't have to, but I can.
Good. It could be a teachable moment. Could be a teachable moment. So, sir, how do we pick up the books? How do we connect with you? How do we book you if we want to get you to speak to the adults or the kids or whatever? So just give us the whole rundown.
Yeah. For the books, they are on Amazon. So you just go and type in my name, Timothy Felton, and some of them are under Dr. Timothy Felton. But Timothy Felton, I think all of them come up. So they're on there for the books, and then, like I said, I speak with after do workshops and different things like that. So just do the website www.timothyfelton.com. Look, for that information. I can give out phone number 314-445-9730. People can text me, let me know, you know what I mean?
Great work. Well, I truly appreciate your time and the work that you're doing, the service that you are doing. We're gonna keep our eye on that Mr. Jordan there, following granddaddy's steps. So we'll see him in 4, so maybe 20 years or so, he'll have his own doctor something, huh?
Yeah, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I thank you again, and I truly enjoyed our time, and onward and upward from here. Thank you, Dr. Felton.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That is all for this week's episode of The Male Perspective. I'm your host, Lana Reed, and I will see everybody next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Black Men Matter series on the Male Perspective. This podcast is an initiative of Conversations in Color, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to uplifting Black voices. Make sure to check out our website, conversationsincolor.org, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode.